This is The Law Show on CL 650. Now back to the show.
Make a wish, take a chance, make a change, and break away.
Hey, welcome back to The Law Show. I'm Zach Spencer, and today we're talking about relationships, ending relationships, and family law. David Halkett, partner of McQuarrie Hunter, and Leah Donaldson, associate of McQuarrie Hunter, join me in studio. You're based in Surrey. You're above the SFU campus there, right?
That's correct, yeah.
And apparently you have an amazing view.
I do. Leah and I have a great view to the west. I can see the airport all the way to the Vancouver Island Mountains. We have a great view. So we know what the weather's going to be like in 2 hours in Surrey just by looking out our window.
That's good to know. And also you're right at transit line, right?
We are, yeah. The Surrey Central.
Yeah, the Surrey Central Station.
So do people, I mean, for your firm, is it mostly geographical, or people come from all over the greater Vancouver area?
For me personally, I have them all over. The majority would be in Surrey, New West. Some in Langley, some Delta, but mostly in Surrey. But I know our firm has clients all over the Lower Mainland in the province, more on the corporate side. But Leah, you probably have them from all over as well.
I do, yeah. Vancouver, Richmond, all over.
Okay, now we talked a little bit about the sort of checklist you want to bring into the office when you come to meet. So what assets in a marriage can be divided?
Well, just about everything that's owned by one of the parties can be. So the main asset for most is the house.
Right.
Second asset, biggest asset, are pensions. Especially if you're dealing with government employees. They always have a pension.
And good ones, from what I hear.
They are, yes, they are very good. You know, they come in and say, "Oh, my pension's only worth $75,000." So no, that's your contribution. You know, multiply that by 3, 4, or 5 times. That's the value of your pension. RSPs are big as well.
I'm sure the person that's having that conversation about their pension doesn't like that, though, saying it's actually worth 4 or 5 times more than that.
Well, pensions are divided differently under the Act, and we can discuss that a bit more, but basically you divide half of the credits during the time you're together. So
so even if it does have a multiplying effect, you benefit from that.
Exactly. And a lot of government employee pensions are based on your best 5 years of income.
So they're still to come?
Potentially, yeah. Some people, they always want to keep their pension. And I find, just my experience, the women who own the pension don't want to give up their future security. They don't want the husband to take the portion of the pension. But the law requires that it be divided per the Act unless the parties agree. And often if you want to buy it out, it costs a lot of cash to buy out the other person's portion.
Okay, so you mentioned RSPs.
Then there would be just the household goods and effects, second properties if you have any, potentially. Then there's the cars as well, business interests, shares, stock options, etc.
But you're also dividing the liabilities.
That's true. Yeah.
And a lot of people don't realize that, you know, if you and your spouse are running separate bank accounts and separate credit cards, you know, your wife might have a handbag fetish and have run up all kinds of these things happen, right?
They do.
And the guy's a gambler, and you're not really aware of that, or he's buying, you know, car parts for his old Corvette and has run up these huge debts, and here you go. I didn't know you owed $20,000 on your credit card.
Well, that's it. And Leah's probably had some cases with a lot more debt, you know, on some of your cases. Like I've had them too, but where there's almost as much debt as assets. And the worst cases, and I have one now that I'm dealing with, is you're just dividing debt and trying to get the two parties to divide the debt, and they're paying money to try and get debt divided.
Which seems asinine, really. Yeah, you're paying, so you got to pay you on top of that.
Exactly. And the tough part about the division of debt is it's not binding on the debt holder. So Leah and I own...
What does that mean?
So Leah and I have credit card debt between us, say $40,000 to CIBC Visa. We agree I spend all the money, it's 30 grand, she only owes 10. We say 30 and 10. I say, "Oh, I don't have the money, I'm not paying it." They still go after her for the 40.
For the full amount. So the creditor doesn't care who actually spent the money. They only
They
care
just
that
want
you
their money.
agreed. Exactly.
Show me the money.
They don't care who pays them.
Right.
And
Have
so
you had instances where you've had advice from your colleagues to just declare bankruptcy in a divorce?
That's happened at times where the one party has said, we'll do a joint declaration. The problem is often you still end up being stuck with the debt is still there. You're both going to not get credit for 6-7 years, and it may not be worth it depending on the size of the debt. but one just refuses to pay.
Right. And is that a way of a bit of a vendetta? As someone says, yeah, I agree to take half of the $40,000, and then they say, no, I'm not paying it, and they go after the other.
Oh yeah, for sure. And then no matter what the agreement says, Lee and I could have had an agreement that says, all right, I'm going to pay 30, you're paying 10. If you have to pay part of my 30, I reimburse you. Well, I haven't paid my 30 in the first place. I have no money. She comes after me and said, I still have no money. So, and there's always one party out of the two that cares more about their credit rating than the other. Some just don't care. So,
yeah,
that's scary.
Okay, so what about the division of assets when children are involved? So children need a place to live. They need to have shoes and, and be looked after. So how do you deal with that?
Often the party that's going to have the primary care of the children in the meantime, so leading up to the agreement or trial, will stay in the main home. If one party is going to leave the property, then often that party will have the family home to maintain the children in. You
must get some resistance, though. People say, if I'm actually leaving the house, I'm you're physically out, right? But the law doesn't see it that way, right?
No, their rights to the home don't actually change. They don't. They're not entitled to less.
That's a
as a result of
psychological
leaving.
barrier for
yes.
some, right?
And there's less control over the asset if you leave it. So if there is a sale process that will be taking place, if you're not the party that's living in the home, obviously the person that's living in the home may not keep it clean or meet with the realtor. So there is a less aspect of control, but you don't. Your right to the property doesn't diminish.
So the primary caregiver, typically under a certain age, is women for the most part, right?
Generally, yeah. It's changed a lot than when I first started, but certainly, if the children are under 6, 7 years old, usually they're going to be primarily with the mom. Although there's a lot more stay-at-home dads now than there was a number of years ago. So
we talked about all the number of lawyers being called to the bar are women.
Yeah.
So often the professional, same with doctors, same with a lot of professions, that women are now the main breadwinners.
Exactly. It has changed so much in terms of just the demographics and who makes what than when I started, for sure, and probably even since you started.
Yeah,
7, 8 years ago.
I've noticed that it's not sort of a foregone conclusion that the mother will be the primary parent.
And maybe not want to be.
Exactly. Sometimes the bond is stronger between the father.
Well, we had a lawyer that used to work in our office that she's always been the one that worked, and she only took 3 months mat leave, and the husband has always been the primary caregiver. So it's the exact opposite of a
traditional sort
exactly.
of setup, right?
Still traditional, just diametrically opposed. But one thing I'll add to what Leah was saying about being in the home, the party staying in, the party that moves out, as she said, loses control, and it also can be an issue that the party that's in the home, that if things are being paid through joint funds or whatever for the house, has less incentive to resolve anything because they're still in the home. Because they know the minute it's resolved, they got to get out. So often I will recommend to my clients, unless you absolutely have to move out, you don't lose your rights to the home, but unless you absolutely have to move out, don't, because it makes it
can prolong the process, right?
Exactly.
Because they are comfortable, they want to stay, they don't want it to end.
Exactly.
So you see these sort of in the movies where the husband is the guy going to live in the basement suite somewhere, and the wife, traditionally, we're not saying that's the case now, stays at home with the 2 children or 3 children, and that's the way it should be. So the mom should get this asset because they're looking after the children. But the law doesn't see it that way. They see it as a straight 50-50 divide.
Yeah, all cases start off with an assumed equal division of the asset, subject to other sections in the Act, but you assume the division. It doesn't matter who's living in it. You used to be able to postpone a sale, but that doesn't happen nearly as much anymore because the prices keep going up, and no one's willing to stay on the home for a number of years. When I first started, there was actual law that said, well, maybe we shouldn't sell a house until the children are 18 years old. The kids could be 9, 10 years old. That's never happening anymore.
No.
But certainly you tend to want, the law assumes it's equal, and will deal with where they got to live afterwards.
So all those stories about, the dads get screwed over, right? Yeah. Right? When it comes to these things, that's not the case in BC.
No, it isn't.
Because you hear all those stories as the man was always paying, and And now the flip side of it is a lot of women who are professionals, they might actually be paying.
Yes.
And I think the better way to put it is the higher income person is the one who has to keep paying, and can get screwed over, if you want to put quotes around screwed over.
No, I'm just saying there was always it was always framed as the man who was getting.
Oh yeah. Well,
even though women are growing in stature in society with bigger jobs and professionals, it was still the guy that was going to get it. But that's not the way it worked.
No, that's not the way the law says. Now the parties may still see it differently. Like I remember Joan London, who used to be on TV years ago.
Right, yeah.
She made 25 million a year, and the husband was.
Wouldn't that be a nice problem to have?
Exactly. And the husband, I think, was more stay at home. And when he was getting X amount of dollars a month in spousal support, she goes, "I think it's atrocious. Our legal system allows a man to live off his wife." Right, and this was 20-something years ago, and so it is changing. It's the person who earns more that has to be the one that pays.
Mm-hmm. And usually the person that's paying is unhappy with it. That's the reality.
Well, David, we've mentioned before when we're talking the show, when you come to a resolution and nobody's happy, you probably got it right.
Yeah, that's the right one. Yep.
Because if
you're both having to give up things that you don't want to.
Yeah, there's nobody coming out of court high-fiving, saying,
when Leah does a lot of mediations often in the office, and she'll come out and she'll resolve it, and you see both clients going out with their chins down on the ground. It's like, oh, it was a good mediation then, wasn't it?
Yeah.
So what you bring to the dance, do you leave it with the dance with? Like you bring assets forward. Like say, for example, you're 20 years old and unfortunately a parent dies, or your parents are, and you inherited some money, and then you marry and you come into, is that money able to stay with you?
Well, under the statute.
Or you had a grandparent give you money when they passed away?
Under our statute, the Family Law Act, what you bring in as gift, or receive as gift, inheritance, or bring into the relationship is supposed to remain excluded. And the law is still in a bit of a flux, because we just had a recent case at the end of April, early May, which may have thrown a bit of a wrench into that.
All right. Well, I tell you what we're going to do is we'll find out about what that case involved and how it affects bringing money into a marriage and dissolving a marriage when we return next on The Law Show on CL 650.
There's more of the show still ahead. This is The Law Show on CL 650.